I walked into my backyard and stopped dead. String lights draped across my pergola, a long catering table pressed against the fence, 40 women in white sundresses milling across my pool deck, and right in the center of my pool, waist-deep in my water, bridal sash slung across her chest, champagne flute raised high, was my neighbor Karen. "Karen, what the hell is this?" She turned, didn't even flinch, and said, "It's my bridal shower, Daryl. Next time, just say yes, babe. Save us both the trouble." Then she turned her back to me in my own backyard. I looked at my pool, my deck, my pergola wrapped in someone else's party. "Fine. You want this pool so bad, Karen. Let's see how you like it in about 20 minutes. If someone took what was rightfully yours, drop a below. What would you have done? Where are you watching from? Drop your state, because what I did is legal in 38 of them. Let me take you back to where this actually starts. My name is Daryl Whitmore, 54 years old, retired HVAC technician, Clover Creek Estates, just outside Knoxville, Tennessee. The kind of neighborhood where everyone knows everyone's business. Half of them are writing it down, and the other half are posting it on Facebook. I bought my house in 2009, right after the divorce. The settlement left me with just enough for a down payment and not much else. 3-bedroom ranch on half an acre. Backyard full of weeds. Cracked concrete slab where a patio used to be. It didn't look like much, but it was mine. Every square foot of it mine. I spent the first 2 years fixing the inside. Then I started on the back. The pool took 18 months. 16 by 32 feet. Gunite with a tanning ledge. Waterfall feature built from stacked Tennessee fieldstone. $34,000 out of pocket. Every paver on that deck laid by my own hands. I can still feel the grit of the sand base under my fingernails, still smell the sharp bite of fresh concrete on a hot afternoon. I didn't hire it out. I didn't cut corners. When it was done, I stood at the back door, looked at it, and felt something I hadn't felt since before the divorce. Like I'd earned something permanent. Karen Voss moved into the house directly behind mine in spring of 2019. Her backyard faces my backyard. Her kitchen window has a direct line of sight to my pool deck. Within 2 weeks of moving in, she was already at the back fence, glass of wine in hand, looking over, staying a little longer each time. I figured she was just being neighborly. Then she started dropping comments. "That waterfall must have cost a fortune. I bet it's beautiful at night. You ever rent it out for parties?" Small things, casual things, the kind of comments you file away without thinking about them. I should have thought about them. Karen got herself elected HOA treasurer inside of 6 months. Clover Creek Estates, HOA, is not a powerful institution. 5 board members, a part-time property manager named Bryce who treats email responses as a seasonal activity, and a rule book that mostly covers lawn height and fence colors. Real low-stakes stuff. Karen did not see it that way. She started filing complaints the way some people start a fitness routine, aggressive at first, relentless after that, convinced she was doing everyone a favor. Trash cans out past pickup. A basketball hoop 2 inches too close to the street. One neighbor got cited for an unapproved color palette in her flower bed. I'm not making that up. The smell of fresh-cut grass in this neighborhood now carries a faint anxiety with it. Like everybody's wondering what rule they're accidentally breaking. Then one Saturday morning in March, Karen knocked on my door. She was carrying a folder. Nobody brings a folder to a casual conversation. She wanted my pool for her bridal shower. This August. Date already picked. She laid it out like a business proposal. Venue, guest count, approximate timeline. She used the phrase community spirit twice. She said the neighborhood would really appreciate the gesture. She smiled the whole time, and not once did her eyes agree with her mouth. I said no. Clearly, politely no. She tilted her head slightly, the way people do when they've heard something they've decided not to accept, and said, "I'm sure you'll come around, Daryl." Then she picked up her folder and walked back across the fence. 3 days later, I got my first HOA citation. The waterfall apparently was too loud. That waterfall sounds like a garden hose. My neighbor's wind chimes are louder. But there it was. Citation C 20223-047. 30 days to comply or face $150 a day. Coincidence? Sure. And I've got some Tennessee waterfront property to sell you. Now, I want you to understand something about HOA citations. Most people get one, panic, and fix whatever they're told to fix. That's the whole game. Make the process annoying enough, expensive enough, embarrassing enough that the other person folds and gives you what you want. Karen had been watching this neighborhood for 6 months. She knew exactly how people reacted when that official envelope showed up in the mailbox. What she didn't know was that I spent 20 years diagnosing broken HVAC systems for a living. You know what that job teaches you above everything else? Don't touch anything until you've read the manual. The problem is almost never what it looks like on the surface. So instead of panicking, I called my cousin Felicia, a paralegal up in Cookville, and asked her to pull the full HOA documentation. The CC and RS, covenants, conditions, and restrictions, the actual legal backbone of everything the HOA claims it can do. Felicia sent me 47 pages in a PDF by end of day. I printed all 47 pages, sat down at my kitchen table with a yellow highlighter, a cup of coffee, and the kind of focus I usually reserve for a complicated refrigerant leak. The coffee went cold. I didn't notice. I was too busy reading. Here's what I found, and I want you to file this away because it matters. Back when I first moved into this neighborhood, an older guy down the street who'd fought his own HOA battle told me, "Daryl, the first thing you do is read the whole CC and RS document, cover to cover. They only have power over what's written in that book. Not one word more." I nodded politely and forgotten about it until now. He was absolutely right. The HOA had authority over common areas, shared driveways, entrance landscaping, the little park at the end of the street, exterior appearances facing public sightlines. What it did not have, not one sentence, not one clause, was any authority over the interior use of a privately owned, fully fenced residential amenity. My pool sat behind a 6-foot privacy fence, not visible from the street, not a shared space, not listed anywhere in that document as a community resource. The CC and RS are contract, and like any contract, if it's not written in there, it doesn't exist. Period. I filed a formal written objection to Citation C 20223-047 the following morning. Cited the exact CCNR sections. Attached a decibel reading I'd paid $75 to have done professionally. Waterfall clocked at 49 decibels, well inside every applicable limit. Sent it certified mail to the HOA board. Return receipt requested. 12 days later, the citation was dismissed. I kept the green card from the post office. I always keep the green cards. Now, a reasonable person might have stopped there, chalked it up to a neighbor with too much time and a shiny new title. But while I was handling Citation 1, Karen was not sitting still. She launched a poll on the neighborhood Facebook group. Should neighbors be allowed to reserve private outdoor spaces for community events? No legal weight, no binding authority, pure social pressure. But in an HOA neighborhood, social pressure is the whole ecosystem. And Karen understood that better than anyone. The temperature in the neighborhood shifted that week. I could feel it. The way you feel a pressure change before a storm, that subtle heaviness in the air that tells you something's coming. 3 neighbors who used to wave from their driveways suddenly found other things to look at. Karen took her campaign to the HOA board next. Proposed a formal rule change. Any residential pool over 400 square feet classified as a semi-community amenity subject to a mandatory use schedule, 4 days per year open to neighbors. The language was HOA polished, but the translation was simple. Give me your pool twice a summer or face a fine. The board voted 3-2 against. Karen's face didn't move when they read the result. Not a flicker. It was the stillness of someone who has already decided that the vote is just a temporary obstacle. She posted on Facebook that evening. Some neighbors choose division over community. Sad, but not surprising. 41 people hit the heart emoji. Bev commented, "This feels personal, Karen." Karen didn't respond. I didn't post anything. I opened a document on my laptop, typed correspondence log, Karen Matter, at the top, and started writing. Every date, every quote, every interaction, time-stamped. 3 pages that first night. By the end of this story, 27. You'd think losing a board vote would slow Karen down. It did not slow Karen down. 4 days after the vote, I got citation number 2. This one was about my pool fence, specifically the gate latch. It cited a county ordinance requiring pool enclosure latches to be self-closing and self-latching from either side at a minimum height of 54 inches from the ground. My latch was at 52 inches. 2 inches. That was the whole complaint. 2 inches on a gate that had been installed in 2014, inspected by a county building official, signed off, permitted, and never once flagged in 9 years of HOA existence, until the exact moment Karen needed another angle of attack. I looked at that citation for a long time. The August heat was already building by 9 in the morning. That thick Tennessee humidity that settles on your shoulders like a wet blanket and doesn't lift until October. A cicada was screaming somewhere in the oak tree by the fence. That high, relentless whine that sounds like the universe reminding you that some things just don't quit. I read the citation again. Then I got in my truck. I drove to the county building permits office. Here's something I only knew because of an old client, a retired contractor who'd fought a zoning dispute years back and won. He told me once, almost as an aside, "Daryl, any permitted job you ever do, keep every piece of paper, but even if you lose them, the county has them forever. Public record, free to pull. Walk up to the counter and ask." I filed that away and mostly forgotten it until now. I walked up to the counter and asked for the pool permit from 2013, the fence permit from 2014, the gate inspection certificate signed by a county building official dated October 14th, 2014. Every box checked, every line initialed. And here's what made Karen's citation fall apart completely. The county had revised its pool enclosure ordinance in 2019, 5 years after my fence was built. Under Tennessee property law, structures built and inspected under the code in effect at the time of construction are grandfathered. The revision didn't apply to my gate. The citation had no legal basis. It was provably, documentably wrong, using public records that anyone with 15 minutes in a county permit office address could pull for free. I filed my second formal objection that evening. Every document attached, permit, inspection certificate, the statute section on grandfathering, all of it. Sent a copy to the HOA board, sent another to the county building inspector's office, noting that citations were being filed against permitted, inspected, grandfathered structures in Clover Creek Estates. The building inspector sent back a form letter. "Thank you for your correspondence." But it was in their system now, and I'd learned something from 20 years of HVAC work. A file that exists will eventually be opened. Meanwhile, Karen had decided that if citations weren't enough, she'd work on something harder to fight. My reputation. She started telling people I had issues with women in authority. Not at a public meeting, not in writing, over back fences, at the little park on Saturday mornings, in the kind of quiet conversations that don't leave paper trails but travel faster than any certified letter. Bev called me one afternoon. I could hear her deadheading her petunias in the background, that brisk snap of stems, and said she told Lynette from the corner house that you've got a pattern of this. That's the word she used, pattern. I wrote it down. Date, time, source, exact wording. The log was 14 pages. Now, here's the thing about that kind of smear. It's designed to make you react. Get angry. Post something online. Show up at someone's door. Say something you can't take back. That's the trap inside the trap. Karen was good at citations, but she was better at bait. I didn't take it. Instead, I picked up the phone and called an attorney named Preston Dalby, real estate law, Knoxville, $125 for a 30-minute consultation. I laid out everything. The citations, the dismissed objections, the smear campaign, the Facebook poll. Preston listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You've been documenting all of this." I said, 14 pages so far. He said, "Keep going." Preston Dalby was not the kind of lawyer who got excited easily. 30 years in real estate law will do that to a person. He'd seen boundary disputes drag on for decades, HOA feuds that outlasted marriages, neighbors who spent more money on attorneys than the thing they were fighting over was ever worth. His office was small and comfortable in the way that competent people's offices tend to be. Walls lined with case files, a desk buried under yellow legal pads, the whole room carrying that particular smell of old paper and burned coffee. That means someone actually works there. He listened to everything without interrupting, read through my correspondence log page by page, set it down. Then I told him about the invitations. He looked up. She sent out invitations to your address without asking. 40 of them. Cardstock, watercolor border. My home address on the front like I'd agree to host. When did you find out? When a stranger knocked on my door asking about parking. Preston picked up his pen and didn't put it back down. Then he told me 3 things in the measured, unhurried way that good lawyers deliver information they've had to deliver before. First, Karen walking into my backyard without permission, tape measure in hand, notebook open, measuring my pool deck like she was planning a renovation, was criminal trespass under Tennessee Code Annotated Section 39-14-405, Class A misdemeanor. My Ring camera had the whole thing, timestamp, entry, the measuring every second of it. Second, the pattern of HOA citations filed immediately after my refusal, targeting grandfathered structures, dismissed each time on the merits, was textbook retaliatory enforcement. In Tennessee, that pattern can expose both the individual and the HOA to civil liability. It has a legal name. It has legal consequences. Karen had been building my case for me, one citation at a time, without realizing it. Third, and here Preston leaned forward slightly, which I would come to understand was his version of significant enthusiasm. I had the right to file a formal notarized trespass notice, serve it on Karen personally via process server, and file proof of service with the county. Not a letter, not a warning, a legal document that converted any future entry onto my property into a documented, chargeable criminal offense with a paper trail so clean you could eat off it. I paid $125, drove to a notary, and had the notice prepared before close of business. 3 days later, a process server in a blue polo shirt knocked on Karen's front door at 10 in the morning. Todd answered. Karen's fiancé, a quiet, tired-looking man who moved through this entire story the way furniture moves through a house fire. Present, uninvolved, and slightly singed by association. He took the envelope, read the return address. His shoulders dropped about half an inch. Then he turned and handed it to Karen, who was standing behind him in a bathrobe, holding a coffee mug. Bev watched the whole exchange from across the street. She called me that afternoon and said Karen's face had gone through a lot of phases. I asked her to be more specific. She said, "You know that look someone gets when they thought they were playing checkers and it turns out the other person was playing chess? That look. Several versions of that look." Karen did not come to my fence for 11 days. 11 days of the waterfall running steady over the fieldstone. The pool clean and still in the late summer heat. The backyard exactly as it was supposed to be. I grilled on 2 of those evenings. Hickory wood, smoke drifting slow toward the back fence, and let myself enjoy the quiet without trusting it. I was right not to trust it. On day 12, a business card appeared wedged in my front door. Local fencing contractor. On the back, in Karen's handwriting, in case you want to handle the latch professionally. The latch she'd cited me for. The citation that had been dismissed 3 weeks ago. The violation that had never legally existed. She knew that. I knew that. This wasn't a tip. It was a message. I have not moved on. I am still coming. I stood on my porch and looked at that card for a long moment. The evening was cooling down, crickets starting up in the grass, the smell of someone else's dinner drifting from down the street. I photographed the card front and back and added it to the log. 18 pages. Then I went inside and called my nephew Marcus. I called Marcus that same evening. My nephew has been doing commercial pool work since he was 19. The kind of guy who can look at a pump system and diagnose the problem before he's even touched it. More importantly, he's the kind of guy who, when you call him at 8 o'clock at night with a problem, picks up on the second ring and doesn't ask unnecessary questions. I told him the whole story. Karen, the citations, the invitations with my address on them, the trespass notice she'd apparently decided to use as a bookmark. When I finished, there was a short silence. "So, she's actually going through with it," Marcus said. "Invitations are already out. Caterers booked. I saw the photographer's deposit receipt posted in her private Facebook group. Bev screenshot it." Another silence. Then Marcus said, "Uncle Daryl, have you ever heard of a pool shock indicator die?" I had not. He explained it the way he explains everything. Straightforward, no drama, like reading from a manual he's memorized. Pool professionals use it to detect leaks. Drop it near a suspected leak point. The dye follows the water current and makes the path visible. Standard industry product. Every pool supply store carries it. About $12 a pack. Non-toxic. Biodegradable. Completely harmless. But here's the thing, Marcus said. In warm water under direct August sunlight, the moment it gets disturbed, it activates fast. And whatever it touches goes blue. Not a little blue. Vivid, obvious. Nobody's going to miss this blue. Lasts a few hours, then fades completely. I didn't say anything for a moment. Outside, the crickets were going full volume. The pool filter humming its low, steady note through the back wall. I looked through the kitchen window at the pool, clean, still, catching the last of the evening light. White sundresses, warm August water, 40 uninvited guests. It's legal, I asked. It's a commercial pool maintenance product, Marcus said. I've used it 100 times. That was enough on that question. The next morning I called Preston and laid out the plan. There was a pause, his thinking pause. I knew it well by now. It's your pool, he said. Legal product, legitimate maintenance use, your own property. If someone trespasses into water that happens to contain a commercial pool treatment, that's a consequence of trespassing, not something you did to them. He cleared his throat, paused again. I'm not telling you to do it, he added. I'm telling you it's not illegal. Coming from Preston, that was practically a standing ovation. Here's what I want you to understand about this moment, because this is where everything shifts. For 3 months, I had been reactive. Citation comes in, I respond. Smear campaign starts, I document. Trespass happens, I file a notice. Every move I made was a counter to something Karen had done first. I was playing defense on my own property in my own backyard against a woman who had decided the rules didn't apply to her. That ended the night Marcus said the words pool shock indicator die. From that moment, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. There's a difference. And Karen, for all her tactical maneuvering, had never once considered that I might stop waiting for her next move and start making my own. I called Marcus back, told him I needed 4 tablets and a walkthrough on dosing. He showed up that afternoon with the tablets, mesh weights to hold them at the pool floor, and the quiet, satisfied look of a professional who has just been asked to do something he finds genuinely interesting. We stood at the edge of the pool together in the late sun, water clear and still beneath us, the waterfall running soft behind us. Nobody's going to see these, Marcus said. That's the idea, I said. Marcus walked me through the dosing like a professor who genuinely loves his subject. For tablets, 1 per corner of the pool floor, held down by small mesh weights so the water movement wouldn't shift them. In a pool my size, roughly 15,000 gallons, 4 tablets would create full activation within 60 to 90 seconds of significant water disturbance. Someone waiting on the tanning ledge might not trigger it immediately. Someone going waist deep, moving around, kicking up water from the bottom, that would do it fast. The color, Marcus told me, would spread from the activation point outward. Not a slow bleed, a bloom. The way ink spreads in a glass of water, except bright aqua blue and moving with purpose. Anything organic it contacted would hold the color. Skin, hair, natural fiber fabric. White fabric most of all. White fabric like, say, 40 sundresses. I went to the pool supply store the next morning. The tablets were on a middle shelf between the chlorine shock treatments and the pH test kits. Small, unremarkable, the kind of product that blends into the background until you know what it does. I put 4 packs in my basket. Then I stood there in the pool supply store aisle for a moment under the fluorescent lights with the faint chemical smell of chlorine products all around me and thought about Karen standing in my pool with her champagne flute. I bought 8 packs just to be safe. Back home, I called Preston to confirm the legal parameters one more time. I wanted on record that I had sought counsel before doing anything. Preston confirmed. Legal commercial product, own property, legitimate maintenance application. He also took the opportunity to inform me that he'd been doing some digging of his own. While processing my dismissed citations, Preston had obtained the HOA's financial records through a formal records request, something any HOA member is legally entitled to do, a fact that most HOA boards count on their members not knowing. What he found was a line item in the HOA accounts. $1,200 in administrative fees charged against my account over the past 3 months. Not fines, fees for administrative processing of my citations. Citations that had all been dismissed. Fees I had never been informed were being charged. Fees that had no basis in the HOA's own fee schedule. Karen, as HOA treasurer, had been billing me for the privilege of defending myself against her own false citations. The audacity of that is something I still think about occasionally, usually when I need a reminder that human beings are capable of absolutely anything. Preston filed a formal demand letter to the HOA board requiring full repayment within 21 days, after which he would file in small claims court. He also filed an ethics complaint against Karen in her capacity as treasurer, citing unauthorized fee assessment as a breach of fiduciary duty. Small claims court in Tennessee handles disputes up to $25,000. No attorney required, low filing fee, and HOA boards hate the paper trail it generates almost as much as they hate losing. Karen was about to get paperwork from 2 directions at once. The camera setup came next. I upgraded my Ring subscription to include 24-hour local backup storage. My nephew helped me position a second camera, a Wise outdoor unit, $40, inside my shed, aimed at the pool gate from a low angle. 2 cameras, 2 sight lines, both cloud-backed, both time-stamped. If anything happened at that pool, it was going to be documented from angles that would hold up in any proceeding Preston needed to use them in. Bev, when I told her the date, didn't hesitate. "I'll be on my porch," she said. "I see everything from my porch." She showed up to that commitment the way she showed up to everything, completely and with baked goods. Peach ham pies made from scratch. The smell of them drifting over the fence that Saturday morning like a warm, buttery promise that justice was nearby. The night before the party, after dark, I went out to the pool alone. The neighborhood was quiet, just the crickets, the waterfall, the occasional car on the main road 2 streets over. I crouched at each corner of the pool floor and placed the tablets, pressed the mesh weights over them, watched them settle invisible against the pale plaster. The water was clear, perfect, undisturbed. I stood up, looked at the pool for a long moment. Then I went inside, set my alarm for 6, and slept better than I had in 3 months. August 12th came in hot. By 7 in the morning, the air already had that dense, pressurized weight that Tennessee summers save for their worst days. The kind of heat that makes the pavement shimmer by 9 and turns the inside of a parked car into a religious experience. I was up at 6, made coffee, checked both cameras, Ring and Wise, both recording, both backed up to cloud. Walked out to the pool, looked at the water, clear still, the 4 tablets invisible on the floor, exactly where Marcus and I had placed them. Everything was ready. I made a second cup of coffee, poured it into a travel mug, and carried my lawn chair out to the side of the back porch, where I had a clear sight line to the pool gate. Not hiding, not lurking, sitting on my own property in my own chair, in the open, in plain sight. I was wearing a clean shirt. I had my phone, my folder of documents, and my gas station coffee. I was prepared to wait as long as it took. I didn't have to wait long. By 10:30, cars were parking on the street. I could hear doors closing, voices carrying in the heavy morning air, the bright, excited sound of women arriving at what they believed was a party. By 10:45, the first guests were visible at the top of my driveway, following the hand-lettered signs Karen had apparently posted on the telephone poles. Little watercolor arrows pointing toward my backyard like this was an advertised venue. She had posted signs on public telephone poles directing people to my house. I wrote that down. At 10:58, Karen arrived. I heard her before I saw her. The particular tone of someone giving instructions, cheerful and authoritative at the same time, the voice of a person who has decided today is going to go exactly as planned. She came around the side of the house, leading a small advance group. 2 women carrying a folding table, one with a bag of string lights, the photographer with her equipment case. Karen had a clipboard. Of course, she had a clipboard. She walked through my gate without knocking, without pausing, without so much as a glance toward where I was sitting 10 feet away. I sipped my coffee. Within 15 minutes, the pool deck was transformed. Tables set up against the fence, covered in a white cloth, loaded with platters and bottles. String lights being wound through my pergola posts. The photographer setting up near the waterfall, testing angles, adjusting her lens. 43 guests filtering in through the gate in a steady stream. White and pastel sundresses, the collective sound of them filling my backyard like a radio turned up gradually. Conversation, laughter, the clink of glasses being unpacked from a bag. Karen moved through it all with the satisfaction of someone watching a vision come to life. Then she looked over at me. Our eyes met across the deck. She smiled, the same smile from the doorstep meeting back in March, the one where the eyes don't participate, and said, "Next time, just say yes, Daryl. Save us both the trouble." I didn't answer. I picked up my phone and dialed the Knox County Sheriff's non-emergency line. Not 911, the non-emergency line, because this was not an emergency. It was a trespass in progress on documented private property. And I wanted a patrol officer, not a rapid response. I had the address ready, the trespass notice number ready, the incident log summary ready. The dispatcher was professional and efficient. Estimated arrival, 20 to 30 minutes. I thanked her, hung up, put my phone face down on the armrest. Karen, across the deck, had turned back to her guests. She had no idea what I'd just done. As far as she was concerned, I was exactly what she'd always assumed me to be. A man sitting in his lawn chair, watching helplessly, having run out of options. That assumption had been her biggest miscalculation from the very beginning. Bev appeared at her fence, peach hand pies on a plate beside her, and caught my eye from across the yard. She gave me a small nod. The nod of a woman who has been watching this street for 22 years and knows when something is about to be resolved correctly. I gave her a small nod back. In my pool, the water was clear and blue and perfectly still. Not for much longer. The first person to go fully into the pool was a woman in a white halter dress. She'd been standing on the tanning ledge for a few minutes, just ankle deep, testing the temperature the way cautious people test things, gradually, one increment at a time. The water was warm. It was August in Tennessee, and that pool had been sitting in direct sunlight since 7 in the morning. She went into her knees, then her waist. Then she pushed off the ledge and swam a short, happy lap toward the waterfall. She disturbed the corner tablet on her way. I watched the water. 20 seconds, 30, 45, and then there it was. It started at the center left of the pool, just below the surface. A widening bloom of color moving outward and slow, gorgeous, absolutely committed blue. Not a tint, not a suggestion. The kind of blue that registers in peripheral vision, that makes you look twice, that you cannot explain away as a trick of the light because it is too vivid, too specific, too unmistakably the color of something that has been activated on purpose. The woman in the halter dress looked down at her arms. She held them up, both hands palm out, fingers spread. Her forearms were blue from the elbow down. She looked at them the way you look at something that contradicts your understanding of how reality works. What is this? The two words landed on the pool deck like a stone dropped in water. Silence first, then ripples. The woman next to her looked over, looked at the water, looked at her own legs, which she had been dangling off the edge of the pool, and which were now unambiguously blue. Oh my God! Within 90 seconds the pool was the color of the Caribbean in a travel brochure. That particular shade of vivid aqua that belongs on a postcard from somewhere with better humidity than Tennessee. The 3 other tablets had activated in sequence, blooms spreading and merging until the whole pool glowed. The waterfall ran blue water over blue fieldstone. The afternoon sun hit it and made it almost beautiful. It would have been beautiful, honestly, if it weren't for the screaming. Not all of it was screaming. Some of it was the sharp, incredulous laughter of people who cannot process what they're seeing. Some of it was silence. The photographer, who had been shooting from the pool steps, stood with her camera bag open and her forearms the color of a smuff, saying absolutely nothing with the expression of someone calculating whether this was covered by her liability insurance. Karen was in the deep end. She had gone fully in. Of course she had. It was her party. It was her moment. It was the pool she had decided was hers. And she surfaced now in the center of it all, bridal sash across her chest. And she looked at her hands. Then she looked at me. I was standing at the pool gate. I had set down my coffee. I said in a voice I kept completely level. Good morning. I am Daryl Whitmore. This is my private property. Every person here is trespassing, and I have it on camera from the moment you entered my gate. Nobody moved for a full 3 seconds. Then everyone moved at once. Karen pointed at me and said, "You did this on purpose. You treated my pool with an illegal commercial maintenance product." I said, "On my own property. You trespassed into it. This is my bridal shower. This is my backyard." She reached for her phone, called Bryce, the property manager, who did not answer because it was a Saturday and Bryce treats weekends as a communications blackout. She called the HOA board president, who picked up, listened for 45 seconds, and said, "Karen, I can't help you with this." The board president's voice wasn't unkind. It was just final. Guests were gathering their things. The catering person had stopped pretending to be neutral and was quietly disassembling the folding table. 2 women in blue-tinted sundresses had already apologized to me personally and were making their way to the gate with the efficient dignity of people who have realized they were deceived into attending something they want no part of. Karen stood in the middle of my pool deck, blue-armed, blue-haired, bridal sash ruined, clipboard still in her hand. The sound of a patrol car pulling up front reached us through the August air. Officer Tatum came through the side gate at 11:47. She was young, composed, and moved with the particular efficiency of someone who has responded to enough neighbor disputes to recognize immediately which party has documentation and which party has a clipboard. She took in the scene without visible reaction. The blue pool, the blue guests in various stages of departure, the catering table half dismantled against the fence, the string lights still tangled in my pergola, Karen standing at the center of the deck, looking like the world's most elaborate evidence exhibit. "Mr. Whitmore." "That's me." I handed her the folder. It was a clean folder, manila, labeled, organized in chronological order, the way a man who spent 20 years writing service reports organizes things. Officer Tatum went through it methodically. The original trespass notice, notarized, with the process server's proof of delivery. The Ring camera log showing entry timestamps for 43 individuals beginning at 10:58 that morning. The dismissed HOA citations, each with my formal objection and the board's dismissal. Preston's demand letter for the $1,200 in unauthorized fees, already filed and timestamped. The photograph of the contractor business card left in my door. 27 pages of the correspondence log, printed and tabbed. She looked at it for a moment. Then she looked at Karen. Karen said, "He set a trap. He put something in the pool." Officer Tatum looked at me. "Pool shock indicator dye," I said. "Legal commercial product. I have the packaging." I produced it from my shirt pocket. I am not a man who leaves details to chance, and handed it over. She read the label, set it on top of the folder. "It's a maintenance product," I said. "I use it on my own pool, on my own property." Karen said, "He knew we were coming." "Yes," I said, "because you sent invitations with my address on them." The guests who remained, maybe 15 at this point, the ones who hadn't already slipped out through the gate, had gone very still. This was no longer a party. It was a proceeding, and they all understood it. A few had their phones out, though none of them appeared to be filming. One woman in a pale blue sundress, pale blue now for an entirely different reason, sat on the edge of the pool deck with her shoes in her lap, and the resigned expression of someone who has had significantly worse Saturdays, but is genuinely trying to remember when. Bev was at her fence. She had been there since Officer Tatum arrived, peach hand pies untouched beside her, watching with the quiet, steady attention of a woman who intends to be a reliable witness if called upon. Officer Tatum finished her review of the folder. She turned to Karen and said in the measured final tone that good officers use when they want something clearly understood, "Ma'am, I'm issuing a formal trespass warning to you personally. Any future entry on this property for any reason constitutes criminal trespass and will result in charges." Karen said, "I'm the HOA treasurer." Officer Tatum said, "That doesn't apply here." She closed her notebook. In the silence that followed, and it was a real silence, the kind that happens when something has been definitively settled, Karen looked around at her ruined bridal shower. The blue pool, the guests who weren't meeting her eyes, the photographer who had packed up and was standing near the gate with her equipment bag, and the faraway look of someone composing her refund request email, the string lights still half hung on my pergola, one end trailing on the deck like a flag that had given up. She looked at me, and I want to be precise about what I said next because it matters to me that I didn't say it with anger. I wasn't angry. I hadn't been angry in weeks. I said it the way I say most things, level, factual, finished. You can leave through the same gate you came in. She left. The guests filed out behind her, quiet and blue. Single file through my gate into the August afternoon. The photographer, the catering person, Todd, who appeared from somewhere near the back fence where he had apparently been standing for the past 20 minutes, looked at the pool one last time and said to no one in particular, "Nice pool." Then he followed his fiancée out. I stood in my backyard alone for a moment. The pool was still that brilliant, vivid blue. Gorgeous, honestly, in the afternoon light. The waterfall running blue water over blue fieldstone, the whole thing glowing under an August sky. I pulled my lawn chair back to its spot, sat down, and finished my coffee. The HOA board held a special session 2 weeks later. Not called by Karen, called by the other 4 members, which tells you everything you need to know about how the August 12th incident had landed in the neighborhood. I attended. So did Bev. So did 9 other residents of Clover Creek Estates who had, over the preceding 3 months, quietly formed their own opinions about Karen's tenure as treasurer. The board voted to dismiss all remaining citations against my property. They voted to repay the $1,200 in unauthorized administrative fees within 30 days. They amended the HOA fee schedule to require full board approval for any administrative charge above $25. And they adopted, at Bev's motion, a formal anti-retaliation policy, language borrowed from the Community Association's Institute's model guidelines, making it an explicit violation of HOA rules to use enforcement mechanisms for personal disputes. It passed 4-0. The 5th board seat was vacant. Karen had submitted her resignation 4 days earlier. The letter cited personal health reasons. I read it once and filed it under documentation. Resolved. Preston Small Claims Filing produced a settlement offer within 3 weeks. $4,500, a written retraction of the defamatory Facebook post implying I had improper relationships with county inspectors, and a 3-year moratorium on any HOA complaints filed by Karen against my property. Preston called me when the offer came in. I said, "Take it." The check arrived on a Tuesday. I deposited it, drove to a patio furniture store, spent $400 on a new set of pool chairs, and put the rest in savings. The new chairs are excellent. I'm sitting in one right now. Karen and Todd listed the house 6 weeks after the incident. It sold in 3 weeks to a family from Atlanta, 2 kids, a golden retriever named Biscuit. On the day they moved in, the father leaned over the back fence while I was cleaning the pool filter and said, "Is that a waterfall? That is genuinely the coolest thing I've ever seen in a backyard." I told him he was welcome to come look at it sometime. I meant it. Biscuit has already knocked over one of my new pool chairs. He's been forgiven. Bev organized a neighborhood meeting in October. A real one, held at the public library, not in Bryce's garage. 18 residents showed up. Out of that meeting came 2 things: a voluntary neighborhood beautification fund. No fines, no mandates, just people who wanted to contribute doing so, and a scholarship fund for graduating seniors from the local high school, seated by a $2,000 donation from my settlement and matched by 7 other neighbors within the week. The first scholarship went to a kid named Garrett from 3 streets over. 17 years old, had spent his entire junior year volunteering at the county food pantry on Saturday mornings. $500 awarded at a small ceremony at the library on a Thursday evening in November. The room smelling like somebody's good coffee and the particular warmth of a space full of people who are glad to be where they are. I shook Garrett's hand and said, "Keep doing the right thing even when it costs you something. It pays off." He nodded like I was being philosophical. I was not being philosophical. In September, I threw a pool party. A real one. Bev and her husband. Marcus and his girlfriend. Felicia driving down from Cookville. Preston Dalby, who stayed 2 hours and drank exactly one beer and talked about property law with the quiet enthusiasm of a man who has found his calling. Old work friends, new neighbors, kids in the shallow end. Someone brought a speaker and played something with enough bass to feel in your chest. The pool was clear. The waterfall ran. The smoke from the grill drifted across the backyard in the early September cool, and the cicadas had given way to crickets by then, and everything was exactly as it was supposed to be. I'd built that backyard with 10 years of weekends and every bit of stubbornness I ever got criticized for. Nobody is taking it from me. Nobody. 43 women left that backyard blue. Not metaphorically. Not feeling blue. Actually, physically, irreversibly blue for about 3 hours until the dye faded and the whole thing became a story they'll be telling at dinner party for the rest of their lives. Whether they'll admit which party they were at is another question entirely. Daryl didn't win because he was clever. He won because he was patient in a situation specifically designed to make patience impossible. 3 months of citations, smear campaigns, a business card left in his door like a threat dressed as a favor. All of it engineered to make him react. Overreact. Say something he couldn't take back. Karen wasn't just after his pool. She was after his composure. She never got it. 27 pages of documentation. $12 of pool dye. $125 in legal consultation that turned into a $4,500 settlement she had to sign her own name to. That's the math of knowing your rights on your own property. Most people don't know that HOA authority only reaches as far as what's written in the CC and RS. Not one word further. Daryl knew because he read all 47 pages. Because he read all 47 pages with a highlighter at his kitchen table. That's it. That's the whole secret. So tell me, has your HOA ever made something personal? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. Small power, big damage, every single time.